blood banks, bloodlines, genetic bloodlines, genetic codes, water codes, blood codes, activation codes, mathematical functions. Planetary memory banks, networks, tree of life creation, the original template, the original codes, the original math, lines of communication between all the genetics and all the bloodlines, related to all the key codes, related to all the locks and gates. Communication platforms, communication codes, encryption, decrypting the codes, scanning the evolution of a soul, how fast we're learning to each other, the codes, the code transfer, the information transfer, the programs, pocket realities, pocket watches, pockets of codes, reality codes, programming codes, information codes, mathematical information codes, crunching alpha numerical for matter, formatting the drive, formatting the drive motor, formatting the actual axial spin rotation of a Merkaba. Does the math balance out in molecules of fire and water? The function of fire, the function of water, the function of blood, the function of plasma, the function of sound, the function of light, acoustics, acoustic chambers, ecospheres, biospheres, ecosystem design, crystalline spiral design, crystal consciousness design. Thank you so much for the Voyagers material that was released. Thank you. You know how deep my heart goes with all of you that are here and have waited so long to make this happen. For me, it has always been, and I probably ought to do an open video to all those throughout. I'll try and just keep it local, like a local area network, local area Ethernet to America, because I grew up in America and spent most of my time, space, in America. And because of how many run-ins, collision courses, coursework, right? The cross inside of a sphere of light, with so many folks that work not just in the military, right, but law enforcement. And so I don't like to use terminology that is conceived and thus translated in an inverted way of a pyramid hierarchy of control from the top down through artificial light, phantom timelines, okay? Or, if you will, what we call the perception of power. Because as an oversoul, my perception of power is giving primal sound currents, sound and light, which is what love is, it goes on forever, gifting it at the highest acceleration of speed, so that there isn't anywhere within any galactic or universal template of creation that is not experiencing what love is, to experience how it all began, the energy from which it comes. So anyway, it's why I have, even though I have experienced, because of how this works in polarity, and how an AI battlefield is fought, because this is where the complexity gets in, because you realize the complexity of lines of communication, say between a tree and a plant, a tree and a worm and a fish and a bird, the sky and the ocean, everything in the ocean. There's a very complex, interwoven fabric of sound and light communication between everything that is alive, living, and conscious and aware of itself. From the smallest molecule to the largest being, right? And how we translate that in mathematical codes. Music of math. Music of spirit. The math of spirit. And as a result of that, it becomes a very, not really challenging, because it's actually very simple on a love level when you're experiencing what love is, right? But it goes to the deepest level of who we actually are, our true self, acknowledging our true self as an eternal love energy being that I am, right? And I've shared this before in other videos that I've done earlier, is that no matter how much another unit of consciousness abuses me, I will still always love you. And that's the truth of it. Which is to say that my parents could have abused me, a police officer could have abused me, a politician could have abused me, I could have been bitten by a snake and experienced an enormous amount of trauma. I could have been bitten by 1,000 mosquitoes and experienced trauma, right? I could have tripped over a hole, banged my head against a rock, and dear goddess, if I'd ever blamed the rock, right? But, you heal yourself and you move on. You get back on your horse. That's the spirit of what I call a heart warrior, but I don't normally use the word war as a result of being in a war battlefield, because of not wanting to use those letters as numbers that triggers an inverted response within their own math codes, because of the indexing association tied to everything held within the memory, because of the way that word is spelled, W-A-R. And everything that is associated with that word called war, that is associated with it, held in memory. So in other words, I'll give you an example. When I say the word war, anything that's held in your memory that is associated by a cross-index in a circulation library, of all the circulation libraries that are running within a planetary motherboard with blood and water, means it's accessible. It could trigger a negative magnetic polarity response, because war has a lot of associations to the numbers and the math in the tiny bubbles, in the molecules. So I could say war, then you could think of an M1 submachine gun, an airplane, a bomber,